Hello and welcome to the BookTube channel, Jack in the Book Stack, where I talk about a wide variety of book genres and the bookish lifestyle. Today I have my August reading wrap up for you. These are all the books that I read in the month of August 2024, and I rank them in order from my least favorite to my most favorite. I categorize them into chapters down below, so you can always skip ahead a little bit, depending on what you're in the mood for, ranting or raving. But before I dive into that, I wanted to do a little update, like a life lately kind of a thing. And if you don't want to see that, if you just want to hear about the books, you can definitely skip ahead. But life lately has really impacted my reading, both in what I choose to pick up and also what I got out of it, how much I enjoyed it. So I'm going to reference it a lot throughout these rankings. First and foremost, I got 2 new bookcases. My books needed more real estate, so I added these to both sides of the existing bookcase that I already have with the LED lights. These ones have no lights, but they go floor to ceiling, and I am hoping to add some crown molding to the top of them, make them look built in. But these are the Billy bookcases from IKEA. And I know everybody has them, they're super popular. Now I have plenty of room for my library to grow. Now for the really big thing that has been going on in my life recently and really impacted my reading at the end of July and definitely throughout most of August. So I decided that this is the time in my life that I want to pursue another lifelong goal of mine that I have had. And that goal is to be a small business owner. So in August, I was hyper focused on this project. I have a couple options out there, both for starting my own thing, but also purchasing an existing company. This is a massive project in my life, but it really impacted my reading and my BookTube channel in August. I slowed down on the videos, I slowed down on the reading because instead of reading books, I was reading financial statements. Instead of talking to the camera, I was talking to lawyers, accountants, consultants, and mentors. And I have been a horrible BookTube friend because instead of watching the videos that all of my BookTube buddies are putting out, I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos on owning a small business and also videos from the industries that I'm looking at, trying to absorb as much knowledge as possible. I have been so immersed in this project. I was spending about 5 to 9 hours a day on this new venture. And that's a lot of time, but you also have to consider that I work full-time. Like I have a 9-to-5 job, and I also take 3 Spanish classes a week trying to get certified with this level of Spanish that I'm in. And I have family and friends, and there's like so much to balance. And so 5 to 9 hours is a lot. And how did I achieve this? Well, I've been waking up at like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, not forcing myself to, but just because my mind is reeling with inspiration. And so I'm waking up at 3 or 4 in the morning, have my laptop in bed, and I'm doing research. And then I go to work all day. After work, I do my Spanish class, and then I was going right back into the research and building out business plans. And it was just all consuming. But it's a passion project. It's something that I don't mind doing. But I did really notice that I was getting very unbalanced. I completely stopped working out. I didn't care as much about meal planning and cooking, so I wasn't eating as well. I was eating like a lot more fast food, and I wasn't reading. And you know, balance is so very important. And it's not like I want to force myself to read or like not work on these other things, but my mind was just so consumed that like, in addition to waking up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, like I can't fall asleep because I can't turn my brain off. And then I'm dreaming about business stuff, and the anxiety and the pressure and the self-doubt was just crushing me and really, really weight on my shoulders. And so towards the end of August, I was like, okay, you know, I cannot continue at this pace. And so I did have to structure myself like, okay, I'm going to spend these hours on my business plan, but then I'm going to put that aside and I am going to refocus on another one of my passions, which is reading. And so I did structure myself time to get back in the routine. And if I caught myself like my mind drifting back to the business plan, no, like that time has passed, moving on to the reading, and really try to immerse myself in what I was reading to give myself a little bit of a break. Now, when I was trying to immerse myself in these books, there were some very particular characteristics that I needed in the month of August. So I needed a lighter tone, something to really distract me from all the pressures that I've been putting on myself. I wanted and I needed to combat this overwhelming self-doubt that I'm still struggling with books and stories that make me feel empowered and capable and strong. And overall, I really just needed entertainment. I wasn't so focused on like the best writing, but I needed something that was really going to capture my attention and keep it so that I could stay focused and maintain this balance. So that's what's been going on with my life lately, and you will definitely hear echoes of that experience throughout all of my reviews, because it's all about timing with books and pairing the books to the right mood. And so some of these I honestly would have rated differently if I read them 6 months ago, and I'm sure I'd rate them differently again if I read them in another 6 months. But this is how I rank the books that I read in August for the mood and what I was going through this month. Let's start with the unranked category. So first of all, I tried reading Midnight Feast. I had this checked out through Libby on audiobook, and I got through 30% of it before I decided to DNF. Now, I love this author, and so I was kind of disappointed that this one didn't capture my attention, but there were just so many different characters, as there usually is with a mystery, so it's not the book's fault. This is something that I was trying to read at like the peak of all the business stuff going on, and I could not concentrate. I was so confused. I didn't remember who anybody was or which perspective we were in, and I realized, maybe another time for this book. It's a similar story when it comes to Thrust. This fantasy book I am really looking forward to reading one day, but I got through about like 10% of it, and it was just so complex that it was too much. It was too much for me to focus on and my mind was really wandering away from it. So similar story, I decided to put this down for another time. Now let's start the actual rankings. So again, we go from my least ranked book to the highest ranked book for the month of August. And we're going to start with this disliked category. And I'm very happy to report that there are not many books in this category this month. The book that I liked the least in the month of August was The Song of the Marked, a Romantasy by S.M. Gaither. I am so disappointed that I did not enjoy Song of the Marked. This is one that stood out to me because it kind of has like pandemic vibes. There's this sweeping illness that is knocking out people in this world, but our main character is immune to it, and that catches the attention of some of the leaders that maybe she doesn't want that attention. It has found family, or it was promised to have found family vibes in it, and so that's something that really stood out to me. So that's why I picked it up. I was intrigued by the magic and the world, and found family is like a trigger trope for me. I love it. But I could not stand the female main character. She was so abrasive and forceful and over the top, and her banter was just cringeworthy with her love interest, and who's like this captain of the guards, and he's like trying to help her, and she's just being so snarky and thinks she knows everything, and I couldn't stand her. I couldn't stand her. I read like 60% of this and I DNF'd it. But my personal rule is if I pass the 50% mark, I count it as read. So that's why it's on this list, but I do not recommend it. The next book is the last book in the disliked category. I liked it slightly more than Song of the Marked, and that book was How to Become the Dark Lord and Die Trying, a comedic fantasy sci-fi by Django Wexler. Look, I knew what I was getting into with this one. I think I've even said with books labeled as comedy, it could be really hit or miss. And so you have to try to keep an open mind going into it. I'm like, comedy could be a really good distraction. I want a lighter tone. And so that's why I picked this up this month. And it has, or it promised to have, one of my favorite elements in books, and that's like a time loop, or like a day that repeats itself over and over. So in this one, we have our main character, Davy, and she is transported to this world where she is told she has to defeat the Dark Lord. And if she dies trying, it resets from the same point. So all the same events start over, and kind of like Groundhog Day. So I really, really liked that element of it. But when I got into it, you're kind of told that's the situation, but you don't really go through, she's already gone through 200 times or something trying to defeat this Dark Lord. and she's died trying. So you're kind of told that's the situation. Now she wakes up and she's like, you know what, I'm just going to become the new Dark Lord, and I'm going to go about doing this. And you don't really get to see the day repeating itself over and over, which was a bummer. Our main character is very over the top. I'd say if you don't jive with her or the writing style in the first like 5 pages, then the book's not going to be for you, because she just tries so hard. Like, she drops the F-bomb all the time, and I don't mind swearing in books, but like, it just feels like it tries too hard. And there's a lot of footnotes where she can just be her sarcastic, annoying self, and I couldn't stand it. Couldn't stand the main character. The writing. This author is not for me. You know how they say, like, there's this joke on like BookTube and Book Talk about men writing women and like how they can't do it? It's all in fun and games most of the time. Except when you get to this book, and it is so cringeworthy. So our main character is bisexual, and so he writes her to just be turned on all the time and by everything. And she's like hyper sexual. And it just was so cringeworthy. Like, that's how you think a bisexual woman acts and like what's important to her? Really? Now for the liked category. The first book in this list is the one that I liked the least. That was 10 minutes, 38 seconds in this strange world, a literary fiction by Elif Shafak. Whew, this book was quite an experience. So we start this off with our main character, who is dead in a dumpster. She is a prostitute, she has been killed, and she's dead. She's dead. But even though her heart has stopped beating, she still has brain activity for 10 minutes and 38 seconds. And in this time, it kind of like counts down, and with each minute that passes, we get like a flashback into her life and who she is, her childhood, her parents, and then we meet the friends that she has gathered over the years, the people that are important to her, how all these like lost and forgotten people have found each other. It was so beautifully written, and it's such a creative book, and I knew going into this that it would be heavier in tone, because I mean, she's dead starting off, and it has like a lot of commentary on how people dehumanize sex workers. So I knew all this going in. It probably wasn't the best time to pick it up because I did not want a heavy tone. This was very sad and very, I said I was looking for something to empower me and make me feel capable. And this is just a sad tale because she has these 5 friends, her found family, and they band together to give her the burial that she deserves because she has no family. She's a prostitute. Like, the government doesn't care about her, so they pretty much just throw her in a ditch. Like, don't even put her name like on a tombstone for her. So her friends band together to fix this because they love her. She does have family, and it's probably the best found family that I've ever read. That was really, really powerful. But in terms of making me feel uplifted, making me feel capable, this made me feel very powerless and just sad. So that's why it's lower on the liked list. But I recognize that paired with a mood that could handle this a lot better, it is such a beautiful, beautiful story, and I do absolutely recommend. The next book that I liked in August was Stoner, a modern classic written by John Williams. Despite what you might think this book is about based on the title, I will tell you that's probably not it. This is about our main character named William Stoner, and we kind of follow him throughout his life as a kid, living with his parents, like working in the land, for him discovering his love of academia and him going through school and then becoming a professor himself. This is a fantastic story of kind of like the mundane everyday life, like the ordinary average Joe kind of a story, and very character driven, very great character study. I liked it because it was beautiful writing, and I connected with Stoner and just being like an average person. I think for me, reading it this month was not the best time. I picked this up, I wanted to read it because I think it was last month I just read the Neapolitan series, which was very character driven and very much like the story of this girl's life and the people in it. So I thought I was in the mood for this because I was still in a book hangover from that. But this did not make me feel capable or empowered because poor Stoner, like, he tries sometimes. Sometimes he tries, and it doesn't always work out for him. And man, like the different rivalries he has in his profession, the relationship with his wife, it didn't give me that sense of capability that I wanted or needed. And then it was a little bit slower because it is a character-driven book, and I needed a little bit more plot this month to keep my mind on the story, keep it engaged. It was hard to focus sometimes. So I did like it. It was beautiful. I love the kind of ordinary life, the exploration of that, but it just wasn't my favorite this month. Now we are going to completely switch gears with the tone and the genre as we talk about the next book that I liked in August. Dark Restraint, book 7 in the Dark Olympus series, a contemporary romance written by Katie Robert. This is the romance series that starts with the first book, Neon Gods, and it's based on Greek mythology. Each book follows a different couple, and these Greek gods they don't have magical powers or abilities. They're political figures that are either born into their role as like a legacy role, or they can like earn their way into this role. But I like it because it's kind of like Zeus, who's like the king of the gods in Greek mythology, is like the lead one. Ares, who is the god of war in mythology, is actually in charge of the military. Poseidon, who's like the god of the ocean in mythology, is actually in charge of like their sea trade and defenses and whatnot. So you get the point. So this one follows the Minotaur and Ariadne and their story. Now this one, there is a macro plot that has been introduced over like all the books. So each book is its individual couple, but there's like something going on of like an impending threat. And I wonder, because these books are categorized as fantasy on like, I don't know if it was GoodReads or Storygraph, but there's been no magic except for this like barrier that keeps their city safe. And so the overarching plot is someone is coming to take down the barrier and I think wants to like take over the world. So I think that's where the fantasy comes in. But the reason this is in the liked category, I liked the characters, I liked the chemistry, I liked the spice, I just like their whole thing going on. But I don't like the little tiny movement we have in the macro plot. So if you're going to introduce this plot, I need movement in it. And I feel like with each book, very little happens with that. And we got to get moving. We got to get moving. I want to know, like, there's this impending threat and we don't really explore it as much as we should be, I think. So it's like, why even bother introducing it? It could be just fine if you just have the couples and the spice. I don't understand what's going on here. So I'm getting really frustrated, but I did like our couple on this one. I liked everything going on with their story, the micro plot. It's just this macro plot that's kind of grating on my last nerves because we're 7 books in at this point. The next book that I liked in August was also part of a series. I'm talking about Gold, Book 5 in the Plated Prisoner series, a romantasy series written by Raven Kennedy. I am so glad that I read the next installment in this series on Kindle Unlimited because I was really questioning if I should continue with the Plated Prisoner series. My ratings were declining for books 1 through 4, and I wasn't terribly optimistic, but I still wanted to know what was going to happen. So I picked this up, I read it, and I actually really enjoyed it. I don't know if it was the space from the other books, if I was just in a better mood, but the escapism was great. I was really entertained. And my issue with the prior books was really the female main character was bugging me. I thought she was very much like playing the victim and whiny, but I was like, you know what? Maybe with a little bit of break from her, you can get the perspective of like, hey, she's going through trauma, like she'll come out of it, maybe she'll get it together and be like a strong female character. And I liked her a lot more. She was a lot more strategic, and even though she was still like desperately trying to go after her love interest, like at the disregard of everything else going on, she gained some perspective, and I liked that. And she was very powerful, and I liked that. And the strategy and the things she's doing was great. In this one, we did have the stereotypical thing that is it's so bad for romantasy. I think it gives romantasy a very bad reputation. And we did have a situation in this book where there's like this battle raging. People are dying. and these two characters we're following decide like that's the time that they need to get it on because they need to celebrate life. And I'm like, look, if if I'm battling in a war and my leaders decide that, hey, they're just gonna let me go, they're gonna leave me to fight and they're gonna go get naked, that's a problem for me. I would question my loyalty if I knew that's what was going on. Like, I don't care that you need to feel alive. It's just weird, like horrible, horrible priorities. And that's something that's so common in romantasy that it's kind of a joke at this point. But with that aside, I really enjoyed this book. I almost loved it. It was the very end, very, very end, like the last couple pages, a trope was introduced as like a plot twist. Ooh, and it's one of my least favorite. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but it's something that I'm really dreading, and I hope this gets rectified quickly in the next book so I can continue reading them and enjoying them, because I have started acquiring the hardcovers. So I'm committed now, so don't let me down, Raven Kennedy. Now for the book that I liked the most in the month of August. That book is The Familiar, a standalone fantasy by Leigh Bardugo. I was really excited to pick up this standalone fantasy. I've tried reading some other things from Leigh Bardugo in the past, and not all of them have really grasped my attention, but this one did. I like that it was a historical fantasy. We are set in Spain. We follow a main character who has some magical abilities. She's a maid and she can fix like burnt bread or broken glass or like light a fire in the fireplace. Very useful around, for her job. But then she catches the attention of her boss, and her boss starts using her for party tricks. And that's cool, that's interesting, I guess, until she catches the attention of some very, very dangerous men. And then she's in a situation where she's trying to strategize, like what's the best move here, who to trust. There's a subplot of romance, which I think really added a lot to it. Didn't distract from the story, didn't add that comical romantasy kind of vibe to it. Really charming, and I liked the romance in this. The reason this is in the liked category rather than the loved is because our characters went through a lot. They really went through a lot, and then in the end it was satisfying and the characters ended up where they should have. However, it wasn't like as satisfying. Like, the significance was outweighed. They went through so much, and yet it was just like, it was a softer ending. It wasn't as powerful. It wasn't as satisfying as I needed it to be. And so it didn't really hit that empowerment, capability, satisfaction that I was looking for, that I needed from my reads this month. And I don't know what that says about me, that I crave like vengeance equal to the trauma that our characters went through. Like, that's what I expect in the books, and it wasn't quite like that. So it's still really good. I still really recommend this. Now it's time for the last category, the books that I loved reading in the month of August. So the lowest one on the loved list was From Blood and Ash, a romantasy by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I'm sure you know roughly what this one is about because it is a romantasy cornerstone. Like, if you're gonna read this genre, like, you have to read the classics, right? Because so many have inspiration from this series, for example. But in a nutshell, we have Poppy, who is a maiden or the queen's favored. She is the chosen one of the gods to usher in a new era for the people. And this one really surprised me how much I loved it. I devoured this in like 24 hours, I think. I really loved it. Poppy was a female main character that actually didn't drive me crazy at first, like a lot of females in romantasy do. I liked that she kind of had her little ways of rebellion, and she was still she was very kind and thoughtful, and I really liked that. Then we had the romance, which was a slow burn. So it's never gonna work for me if it's like insta love, but this one really, even though there was insta attraction, this really developed over time, and I loved seeing that relationship grow. And I liked other relationships that we had that weren't romantic in this. So this had me really engaged. And then in like the later half or like the last quarter, we get a lot more information about the world that we are in and the dynamics and like the vampire-like element in this and the history of the people and different creatures. I loved it. I love that world building that has been set up for this. So I really liked it. However, at the very end, there is the stereotypical thing in romantasy. I swear, they all have it. They all have it. Where our characters just choose the worst time to go get it on. Like, it's just, like, there's red flags everywhere. Like, what are you doing, girl? What are you doing? I can't take you seriously. Like, your judgment is so skewed right now. It's just poor timed spicy scenes. That's, like, the spice itself, fine. It's just that it was timed so poorly, it was hard to take it seriously. And then I was also really disappointed. I wanted more from Poppy in terms of she seems to just believe whatever she's told rather than like using critical thinking skills and looking for proof or demanding proof. Like, hey, I'll keep an open mind for what you're saying, but I want to see it for myself because I don't know if I can really trust you after, you know, certain events. And so I'm a little bit disappointed with her, and I was talking to my cousin who has read this, and she said, okay, well, buckle up because that's going to continue. Those two things, the poorly timed spice and the, you know, her lack of critical thinking skills might continue for a bit. So I am prepared for it going forward. I still really want to see what's going to happen next because it's the fantasy in this world that has me engaged the most. We are in the top 3 for the reads that I love the most in August. And this next one shocks the hell out of me. Books 5, 6, and 7 from The Throne of Glass, a romantasy series written by Sarah J. Maas. Yes, I did it. I completed a series that I've been procrastinating maybe years at this point. I can't remember. I did do a dedicated reading vlog when I first started reading The Throne of Glass, and it was another case where it was a downward spiral. And so for the first books in this series, like, I was so disappointed with the direction that it went, particularly because I hated the female main character. I could not stand her. And she is younger and she acts like it. She acts like a 16-year-old who thinks they know everything, who kind of doesn't think she needs help from anyone, so she's going to do her own thing and actually puts other people in danger because they don't know what's really going on. And yet she's so snarky, like, haha, I pulled a trick on you, you had no idea. And it's just so frustrating because you don't know everything. Some people have more experience than you. They have different experience than you. I mean, we're talking about Fae here. Like, some of these characters are like hundreds of years old. Okay, like, you think at 19 years old you know more than them? Like, get over yourself. So that's something that really frustrated me in this series, and I wanted to keep reading because, again, I wanted to see what was going to happen with the story, but I was procrastinating it. Well, as soon as I got to book 5, I loved it. I rated this 5 stars. I thought this was incredible, and it's really the other characters in it that I adore. It's all these characters coming together. It's all these characters and plot points that were introduced in earlier books coming together in a very satisfying way here, and it was so entertaining. It was so entertaining, and our main character, it was so strategic. And she did that thing again where she pulled something on the group of people, like a secret that she didn't tell them she was working on, and actually ended up in catastrophe for everybody because she didn't tell them. So they reacted like in a way that, you know, is not unreasonable given the situation, but she put everyone in danger and hurt them because she didn't trust them to tell them and like come up with a strategy together. But anyways, I digress. So that stuff was still here, but we're also deluded by the fact that we have a lot of different character POVs. Everyone has their different motivations, different things going on as they're all working towards this one goal of like saving the world, you know, typical. But I really love this, and it ended on a huge cliffhanger I was really excited about. Now I can see why people going into the next book would get really frustrated because you don't follow the female main character at all. So this one has a huge cliffhanger with their female main character, and then you cut to someone else's point of view who's in a different kingdom. So it's like the same timeline, but like different kingdom. And that's why a lot of people do a tandem read of this. There's like a recommended reading order where you read some chapters and then read some chapters. I didn't want to do that because that's a lot of work, and I was just looking to be entertained, and I wasn't interested in that much work. So I read them separately, and I loved it. I needed space from the female main character. This gave it to me. I love the characters that we followed in this story. I love how there's so many different romances going on. So many of them. And so then by the time we get to the last book, which I just finished this morning, this is like 950 pages. I read this in 24 hours. I'm insane. I had the audiobook, so that really helped. I was like cleaning my house and out by the pool and like listening to it. Most of it I like immersively read with the pages. But anyways, love how all the breadcrumbs finally lead to the final destination. Everything comes together. I loved all the characters coming together. And that's kind of what I wanted. Like when I say I wanted to be entertained this month, like this is kind of what I mean, because I loved like former enemies coming together to help each other. I love the found family vibes. Well, after reading that 10 minutes, 38 seconds, I don't know if these guys are all found family or just like a really solid group of colleagues. But I really loved it. And one criticism that Sarah J. Maas gets is that there's supposedly really high stakes in these like wars going on, but not as many people die as would be realistic. I don't care. That's what I want. I want to fall in love with my characters and I want to have them all live. That's what I want. And so I don't mind that. I needed that. These 3 books absolutely made me feel empowered, made me feel capable, made me feel inspired and motivated and entertained. And I mean, to read 950 pages in 24 hours, you know I was captivated. You know this kept my mind occupied the way I needed it to. So 5 stars, 5 stars, and then this last one I rated 4.25 because we're in the thick of war in this one, and I was getting really bored with all the battle scenes. Because with all the POVs, like everyone's battling and it just gets so repetitive after a time, like I was getting kind of bored. And with the changing POVs so frequently, like it was just, I know we're trying to make this fast paced and so we're like switching all over the place, but it was hard to remember, like, or not remember, but when we would switch, I was like, wait, whose story are we in right now? And sometimes I'd have to go back up and like read again to figure out whose POV we were in. And then just a huge pet peeve of mine is something that happened with the female main character's magic at the end that I hate when authors do it. But otherwise, I'm so glad that I finished this series and it was so satisfying. I'm glad that I continued. But the downside of this is I'm going to be so hesitant to DNF series from here on out because it could always turn around. The book in the number 2 slot for the one that I loved the most in August was Codependent: Living in the Shadow of AI, a nonfiction by Madhumita Murgia. I am so happy this book came on my radar from looking at the shortlist for the 2024 Women's Prize for Nonfiction. I am going to post some of the quotes that I captured on my Kindle while I was reading this so that you can see some of the facts that stood out to me. This one I wanted to read because AI is on the forefront of everybody's mind right now, and the forefront of a lot of business minds right now. I know in my 9-to-5 job, AI is something that we're pursuing to get some efficiencies and automations, and it's very popular. I am a skeptic of AI because I totally believe in automations, but when I call a customer service number, I hate the automated systems. I just want to talk to a person. Same thing if I'm using like the chat bot thing. I hate going through the chat messages. Just get me to a person. And so I am skewed to a certain perspective. I wanted to see if I could challenge that and open my mind at all. And this book really talks about how the scalable efficiencies benefit the masses, but sometimes at the expense of some minority groups. And there were so many different topics in this that were very enlightening. I did not know how AI was being used in the medical field, and that's one area that seems like some real positive change could happen. I was really happy to read that stuff. I read a lot about the impacts of AI on women, and particularly the type of the AI usage where people can put your real photo on someone else's body and in different situations. And this could be a little bit more impactful to women, and there's no laws and regulations to control this right now. And there was just so much how AI has developed and how certain people are hurt by this process, and how facial recognition, I read this in another book, but how facial recognition was really made for like white men. So if you're not white and if you're not male, it's not as accurate, and there are huge consequences in different use cases for this. And voice recognition software as well is made for the male voice. So there was so much that I learned from this. Now, this does not fit into the criteria that I had this month for wanting to feel empowered or capable, because this made me feel terrified. This made me feel like, holy cow, what can you even do? What can you even do? There were some extreme cases of uses for AI in China where it's terrifying. It's terrifying what's possible and what governments can do like against citizens with this to really control us. And a little bit conspiracy theory, you know, but it is possible. It's not outside the range of possibility. And oh gosh, I don't even know. I don't know what to do. And that's why, like, it doesn't make me feel capable, because I don't know what to do. Like, I kind of just want to turn off my phone and leave it at home now because I'm just scared. But I did learn a lot about artificial intelligence, things I didn't know, and more importantly, different things to keep awareness of. I don't have to have the answer right now. This book, I don't think, intends to give you the answer. It's just awareness so that we as a society can help shape some like safety precautions around this really cool technology that's available to us. We made it to the #1 spot for August. My favorite book that I read this month was The Bandit Queens, a historical fiction written by Parini Shroff. This was everything I needed this month. It was fantastic. This is about a group of women in India, and they're part of a micro lending organization or group where they loan each other money for their small businesses, which you can already hear like the trigger words that like stick out to me as like buzzwords for the mood I've been in this month. But our main character, oh gosh, I can't forget her name, Geeta. 5 years ago, she lost her husband, and the people in the village all whisper about her. And he disappeared, and it's very mysterious. These are mysterious circumstances. And so she has the reputation of killing her husband. And she doesn't mind it all that much because people leave her alone. She's kind of a little bit of a hermit. She likes it that way. Kind of like a curmudgeon. And so she takes advantage of this reputation. And then other women in her lending group start coming to her because they also might want to get rid of their husbands in a similar fashion. And so it's a great mix because there are very serious topics here about domestic abuse, like abusive marriages and relationships, attacks against children, and just bad men, bad men. But there's so serious topics, but then there's also this levity to it where the characters are so charming and they're funny, and the dynamics between the women, gosh, it varies so much. How they are like catty and backstabbing to each other, and how they turn their backs on each other because they have this like old grudge, but at the end of the day, they're absolutely all there for each other and have each other's backs. And this is what I needed. I felt empowered. I felt like it was a lighter tone that I needed, but there was enough severity to it to like keep me engaged and keep me grounded through it. It was so satisfying. This was such a satisfying read. And I enjoyed it so much. So those are all the books that I read in August, ranked from my least favorite, ending with my most favorite. I hope that you also had some 5-star reads in the month of August. In fact, if you're still watching, can you drop the title of a book below that you rated 5 stars this month? Because I'm curious to know what you read and enjoyed. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.